right, people in TV land, welcome. Let's call the meeting to order. The Ways and Means Fiscal Year 2025 operating budget and kind of a regular meeting all together at the same time. It's Monday, May 6th, 6:07 PM. And my statement is that the meeting is being recorded by the committee. Nine, if any other person present or do the same, you must notify this guy at this time. Big crowd tonight, seeing none, we'll move on. We've got a roll call of members. So Councillor Tronzo, I'm here. Councillor Garrett.
Here.
Councillor Master Quintero. Here. Councillor Wondolowski.
Here.
Councillor Perry. Here. You got a full council or a full subcommittee? Thank you. We have no approval of minutes. We have no public hearing. So we're going to start with our motions tonight. The first one is order number FY 24-101. The city council, upon recommendation of the mayor, in order to transfer $145,155.32 from bond premiums to water principal paydown. Move that it be ordered to transfer the amount of $145,155.30 from water enterprise bond premiums, Fund 1627, to water principal paydowns account number 61007100599991.
So moved.
Good job. We'll give you the second, Councilor Wondolowski. Kind of by me reading it, by me reading it, kind of moves it. All right, is there any discussions? No questions on the phone? Cool, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'm trying to do this while I'm going tonight, so I'll have to go back home later. Figure it out. Order number FY 24-102, the city council, upon recommendation of the mayor, in order to transfer $214,000 from bond premiums to sewer principal paydown. Moves that it be ordered to transfer the amount of $214,000 from sewer enterprise bond premiums, Fund 1627, to sewer principal paydowns account number 6,071,005,99991. All right. Okay, questions on that one? All those in favor?
Aye.
Third motion is order number FY 24-103. The city council, upon recommendation of the mayor, in order to transfer $14,148.05 from free cash to close out grant deficits. Moves that it be ordered to transfer the amount of $14,148.05 from free cash to close out deficits in various uncollectible grant funds.
Second.
We got some rationale here if somebody has questions on it. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Two. Last one here for motions is order number FY 24-104. City council, upon recommendation of the mayor, in order for water main replacement, moves that it be ordered to appropriate the sum of $500,000 to replace water mains and to meet said appropriation. $500,000 be transferred from FY 24 water retained earnings.
Second.
All right, any discussion on this request? All those in favor?
Aye.
That takes care of the first segment of motions. Meat and potatoes is the FY 2025 operating budget. Order number FY 24-105, the city council, upon recommendation of the mayor, to appropriate $64,866,698 for the FY 2025 general fund budget. moves that it be ordered that the city council vote to appropriate the sum of 64,866,698, which is the full amount necessary for the fiscal year 2025 general fund budget, July 1, 2024 to June 30th, 2025. To meet said appropriation, the following funding sources and amounts will be raised and transferred from parking meter receipts reserve, 350,000, OPEB stabilization, 200,000, pension stabilization, 421,243, free cash, 200,000, raise and appropriate 63,695,455.
Second.
You. All right. This is what we're here for. Discussion on,
We're gonna go department by department, or
we can go, I mean, yeah, this has like a, right? We have two things that we can do. Is approve or reduce, and the only two areas we can do any of that is salary and wages or expenses. For all but one department, which is the schools, which is a little different. We can only give them a bottom line number. That number can go up, it can go down. We can't do, it's not as cut as salary and wages and expenses. We can't, there's no delineation on that. It's just one bottom line. But I think if we save that for the end, because it is different, that'd probably be easiest. And
Okay.
if did anybody have, when we were going through all of the meetings on the operating with the departments, did anyone have anything that red flagged to them? To me, this seemed like a very good budget. And it all but covered as much as I think it should. I didn't really see anything that jumped out at me, to be honest.
I found some little things.
Yep,
I'd like to address for you.
sure.
I have two things.
Okay.
Want to go first?
What's your quantity?
Quantity is probably 3 or 4.
All right, we'll go with the small quantity first.
Okay.
See, now I'm nervous.
Don't be nervous.
So looking at the fire department, thinking about cutting down on the overtime because we're adding a firefighter. And just overall, still have concerns about the number of captains and lieutenants and that size of, and there's nothing I can do about that. So they're contracted positions and all of that. But
Funny, you and
But-
I think like the.
what pages? I have to find the.
102 is the fire, 101 and 102 is the fire department.
Yeah.
And I,
So we're, looking at the overtime. So the overtime is at 180. And I would recommend that we cut it to 100,000. So cut 80,000.
that doesn't seem unreasonable, but it's a,
Because I also know that with the free cash over the year, if they go over again, then we'll have to address it at that point. But
So what do you think? If they go over what?
well, if they need more, if they have more overtime, they're gonna have to come back to us.
Right.
So I'd rather,
That wouldn't be from the free cash. Free cash would
That's
be
not-
if we over budgeted and then they didn't need it, it would come back as free cash.
the other way.
Right.
if we cut, it goes into free cash, then that just goes back in the general
Yeah.
fund.
Because this isn't being funded
Okay,
with free cash.
got it.
It's the general fund. Except for, did we have any? We had 200, well, yes, we had 200,000 in free cash. That's being funded for this. Or being funded for the entire budget.
With the chief sitting here, can we ask him a question?
Yeah, I would. Sure, I would caution that that's a huge cut to something that's already been cut. And even with the position, I don't know that I get the idea. I just think it's a large cut. In an area that typically runs thin on having anything left over in overtime. If
That's one
you,
thing on that.
sure,
I cut that because they were having an extra person. But, the chief said to me, I think we'll probably get there because there are new people that are gonna be starting July 1. He already is up to, and has been every year, up to that number, 225. So I just would say that I cut it cautiously. And I was worried because he's gonna have new people that are starting that won't be like ready to like really fill in, but I'll let the chief speak to that, so I would caution that also.
you have a question?
Oh, well, that answers my question, you
Okay.
know, and kind of, you want to defend it at all, chief, while you're sitting here?
If given the opportunity, I would love.
What's your way?
So overtime has always been a sticky point with the fire department. I went in details several times to point out where we spend our overtime, how we spend our overtime, and what you get for your overtime. The two positions, like the mayor said that we're adding, I'm not confident we'll come in at budget with the reductions we already had. The cutting another down to 100,000, which is value that we haven't seen in. I'm gonna have to make arrangements to reduce our staffing. Overtime is staffing, that's all it is. That maintains the shifts at 5, which gives you a bare minimum of an engine company and 2 firefighters on a second piece, whether it's ambulance. At that big of a reduction, we will have to take out the ambulance out of service or the engine out of service. At times when we're fall below, because there's no way I'm gonna be able to meet that budget. I'm not trying to be like scare tactic or anything,
Right.
there's just no physical way from a finance that we'll be able to keep what people are used to for a response out of the fire department, there's no way we'll be able to keep it with that big of a cut.
I guess why is regular staffing considered overtime? Just so I can understand.
Yeah, so we work with a minimum of 5 firefighters on duty. By contract, every firefighter has personal time, vacation time, sick leave and whatnot. We have 7 on a shift, which means that during vacation season, 2 can be off. The third person that's off would create situations where we would have to hire in a shift. In addition to that, every fire that requires us to recall firefighters off duty is paid out of that. Any major event that we have to pay overtime for that. We have to pay for general coverage where if the engine goes out of service for a longer duration, we have to backfill that engine. So we have an engine or an ambulance available to respond all the time. And these cuts would just prohibit me from being able to backfill those engines, which means you'll wait for fire coverage. Instead of having the immediate response or as close to immediate response as we have now. I'm not a fear monger, but this is, when you mentioned that, I kind of threw up a little bit in my mouth because there's just no way I could, we would have to make some really serious adjustments in how we operate with that big of a cut in overtime. My overtime budget's been well over 300,000 in the past, where we've been able to transfer money out to cover the overages out of the ambulance revenue account. That ambulance revenue account is where we're taking the new firefighters, so that money is going to be limited for that capacity as well. I don't see a reduction of that magnitude in overtime without having major ramifications on our day-to-day operations.
If I could just ask a question about, so you mentioned the vacation and like having it, so there are gaps basically, and you end up having to have overtime. This is just like blue sky thinking, because it's absolutely, it's not gonna be possible, but how many additional firefighters would have to be on the force for there not to be these kind of overtime numbers?
So we're hoping, the way that we're structured is 7 firefighters on a shift. This is the first time that we're gonna have 7 firefighters on a shift. What we don't account for, or what we can't account for, is injured on duty. Our job is very dangerous, and there is always people that are injured, that got hurt on the job that are out. Currently, I have two. One of them's been 6 months, the other one's been 3 months, and they're both not returning shortly. They got hurt on the job, pretty significantly. Sick leave is another one that we can't, we can't judge for, right? Because I could have two people out on sick, and like I have a group right now that has 7 on a shift. 2 of the firefighters are out either on long-term sick or long-term injury. That means if anything else happens on that group, I have to backfill that with a firefighter in overtime. I do have an extensive breakdown on every dollar we spend on overtime, and I would be happy to share it with all of you before the next council meeting.
Do you know, I'm asking more, it's just like what? Because again, like this is maybe not being part of the, first responder kind of world, but when I see the words overtime, it sounds like it's beyond the normal course of duty. And that's obviously part of the job is doing things beyond the normal course of duty when there's a disaster and, appreciate and respect that. And, especially folks getting injured. But in a world where money is not an object, I imagine there would be a point in which there are enough firefighters that there wouldn't be overtime. Is that fair to say?
Yes and no, for the volume of firefighters that you're talking about.
Which is ridiculous, like we're never gonna.
Which would be 12 to 13 firefighters on duty at a time.
Okay, that's.
We don't have that because of overtime. So when we commit one engine, and that's all we have is one engine, we recall and staff the firehouse if they're gonna be tied up for more than 20 minutes or so to get, so our structure that we have is structured around the way that we do our overtime. And without overtime, it's then tough, really, really, really hard choices have to be made.
Right, and so we have currently 7 on a shift, is that what you said earlier? Yeah, and
So
so
right now, there are 2 6.
you will,
2
with
7.
these additional, so literally it would be double the number of personnel to have that, again, this absolutely impossibly fully staffed fire department. I just was asking a question for clarity, again, this is.
Yeah,
not
my
a
goal-
budget.
My goal with adding those 2 firefighters is to stay within the operating budget that's presented for overtime as is.
Okay.
We have never met the goal, let me rephrase that. It's been a while since we've met the goal of falling in line with what we're allotted for overtime and what we spend on
Kind of
overtime.
taken from the ambulance fund, yeah,
Correct.
okay, thank you.
I think also the thing to consider on this is the nature of the work, like any emergency service, it's very different than, even where I work, like I'm down a guy today. It sucks, but we'll get what we can done in the meantime, whereas it's a very different thing in emergency services that you have to have somebody there.
Mhm.
And when you've got folks who are working, I forget what they're doing. Are they doing 224s?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
24.
So the moment that you're now in again, it's overtime. It's
So
right.
I'll give you an example of one of the ways we spent overtime last week. We had 12 fires on the railroad track. I didn't have enough firefighters to put it out. So we sent the on-duty crew. We had to call back and staff additional pieces to send them to the fire and then call back enough to cover the firehouse. And this community is used to having a pretty close to immediate response from their public safety, specifically the fire and EMS. It's very, very rare that there are delays. That's not without design. Overtime allows us to do that. And we make adjustments to overtime all the time. We used to have a policy that if they went to a geographical area in the community, they deemed that unacceptable and they would automatically recall firefighters. That's about 15 years ago. Back then, that alone was about 150,000. Just that. So yes, and the overtime looks really big. You can compare us to a lot of other cities and towns. It's actually kind of less than a lot of communities that I have a good friend that works in a department down on the Cape that has a little bit bigger staff than we do. He spends $4.5 million on overtime. So I know it looks like a big number, but it really is comparative what we offer and what the services that we offer. It's not that big of a number. I say that tongue in cheek. I don't, it's a big number. I'm not trying, but it's very expensive to maintain staffing. Immediate response staff.
I'll rescind. It's just one of those like understanding how because when I hear overtime, it means something very different to me.
Right.
Yeah,
And how do we get
Let me
the
get-
staffing so that, you
Right,
know,
that's,
you've got the adequate.
let me get the report to you, and I really, really, really am humbled that you allowed me to speak tonight, because this could have really devastating impact to the department.
I have a couple of small items.
Yeah, go.
Fine. Have you had another one?
Nope.
Because I'm looking at past years, I'm looking at what you've used for the first, oh, crying out loud,
First 3 quarters.
for the first 3 quarters. There you get on the right page. Like, permanently, part-time, $12,500. I think we should look at that. Well, 3 quarters into this year, you've used less than $800 of that number. You're still sitting on $11,777. And that's, I mean, so it looks to me that it doesn't get used or very infrequently, and it's such a small number that if in fact you had to at some point, there's some way maybe we can get that back to you, you know? I would propose that cut. I would propose these are all small numbers, but it all adds up at the end of the year, right? Last year, I'm looking for building and grounds, you had $20,000 appropriated, and you've used about half that. And you have the same amount appropriated this year, I think. Where are you? Building ground, yeah, 20, and mayor cut it to 15. I would recommend we cut that to $10,000. And,
If I may.
Yeah.
That one. We're at a temporary station that doesn't have a lot of maintenance like the new station. The old.
I'm talking building and grounds, right?
Outside. That's what I'm saying. We
Right.
have lawn that we're gonna be taking care of. We've got much more area to clear, clean. The current apparatus for is a driveway. It's not an apparatus for, it doesn't need the maintenance that we're gonna be doing. So that maintenance supplies is all our cleaning supplies and things like that.
But it's not labor, right? I mean, the guys that are on shift, they're doing that, you know, they're,
Red, it's supplies, it's paper towels, it's toilet paper, it encompasses everything in there. And we're one of the only department that's still in our budget.
so can you come back with something a little more reasonable?
Can I point out just,
Oh,
if we're looking back at 22
Mhm.
before,
mhm.
it was 26,000 that year.
then it went
That
down.
was when they were in
Really,
a real fire station.
firehouse.
Yeah.
Not saying that temporary.
Just for
Okay,
that's why I like the longer look backs
right.
on things. Is especially when something like that happens, like we had to run into this with a lot of numbers that changed during COVID.
Okay, that's all.
I mean, that also may have been slightly, to be honest, slightly inflated. I don't have 21 and 20s numbers in front of me. Or even before that, 19, I guess, that it might have been, you know, gone up because of COVID. A lot of things like that you were talking about did go up.
Would implore you to look at bottom line.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bottom line, that we have not turned back money in bottom line in the last few years, and it's not. Like, we have to balance it out. There's some areas that one line item doesn't cover. We may go over on diesel fuel, and I may have to take out of that, diesel fuel.
I imagine the supplies are gonna be kind of the same level they were in the old firehouse, so.
More than what we have now.
Got more than now. Right, that's true.
But I don't know how you guys weren't using paper towels and toilet paper this year, so I don't wanna know what happened.
No, that's just an example. You know, that's everything that you need for janitorial supplies come out of that line.
Just because the number is so low, that's all.
And the buildings we have, we lease. So if the heat goes bad, if the air conditioner goes off, if there's an electrical issue, if there's whatever, the companies are responsible for that. As soon as we move into the new firehouse, we are now responsible for that. And yes, central maintenance takes care of us, but we buy the supplies for that if something goes bad. Now, we hope in a brand new building that would be limited, but I think if you check with other brand new buildings, that's not necessarily the case.
Particularly with this particular architectural firm. Well,
I was just wanting to point that out.
yep,
The part-time wages that Counselor Mastrotaro mentioned, those are effectively volunteer firefighters, is that
That
right?
pays for call firefighters and we've had limited success on being able to utilize them and attract people. We do have several applicants right now that I haven't touched because we're waiting to get into the new firehouse before we take on a project of that. But that, a sense, will take away the ability for us to hire call firefighters. And yes, historically, the last several years, that has been not touched through the whole lot.
like I said, we're running real lean with our budget this city, and I think that this would not be an illegitimate cut. I don't know if anybody agrees.
It'd be 12,500 off the expense line, basically,
The salary line.
off the salary, right?
Give me a little bit just for the firefighters that I do have.
Yeah, I would say like maybe leave 500 in or 1,000, just so
That seems reasonable.
they did what, they're at 500, 3/4 in this year.
They did $722.50. Call it 1,000.
Yeah, because if you, each quarter is 250, then
Right, right.
So we cut 11.5. Sound reasonable, to everybody, or?
We're gonna vote, or?
We can leave them at 2,500, just to say it's a $10,000 cut, not that it super matters if it's even. But just in case there's a additional, somehow expense on it. Although if it's every quarter, what you're saying makes sense. So let's just go with that. I'm fine with that.
What do we have to do?
I mean, these are just recommendations.
Right,
There's no change to the financial order unless it's done at the full city council. So these are just, if you guys want to come to a agreement on what you want to vote on for a recommendation, we can do that.
okay. Maybe once we get it all the things that, if there's other things into one sort of order, does that make?
Well, yeah, I mean, this would be a line item just for fire department salaries.
Okay.
Anyway, if you want to wait and figure out what we're doing with the rest of them before we do any kind of
well, there's only,
totals, or we can,
let's just go one at a time and then total it up.
I don't know.
I mean, if that's okay with everyone. So what we decide, 11.5, does that sound like, yeah?
Yep.
We cut,
Do you want to cut that 12.5? Well, hold on, let me rephrase. This is what we run into every year. We always get hung up on this. We can't cut that line.
okay,
We would be cutting 11,500 out of salaries.
Right.
And the chief figures out where that's going, where that's coming from.
Right, that's true of every department.
Every single department. We cannot like that there's one more, we ran into this with the police issue
Mhm.
Yep.
before. We've run into this with school issues before. We run into it everywhere. At some point, we get line items. We get a lot more line items in description than we used to, which is great. I mean, this part was always there, but, yeah, we can't cut that down there.
Are we able, and this might be at the full council meeting, but just having notes, like, it's not that you're saying, you
We can
say
say
salaries, but we're able to maybe say, asterisk, this is what,
This is why
Oh,
we,
you can. I mean, you can suggest that, however, we can make like a suggestion or letting somebody know this is why we're thinking to cut this line down. But ultimately, it comes down.
and then they can do.
Right, I'm just gonna be, all right, I'll be very clear on this. So when the thing with the police department was happening and certain folks wanted a couple positions eliminated, so wanted to cut the budget
By that amount.
by those two salaries, that was never gonna get rid of those two folks. It was gonna come from the bottom.
Right.
Because that's the way the union contracts work.
That's
And that's how the budgets work, is we would be cutting this down, whether or not the chief decides that he wants to. I don't know, a lot of the time in salary and wages, that's all contractual. I was gonna say if you wanted to cut clothing allowance, but I'm sure that that's contractual. That's not gonna get cut.
these permanent salary, permanent part-time salary wages are,
Mhm.
those are not contractual, right? Those are like volunteers, right?
Right, but I think what he's saying is that it would eliminate the opportunity
to hire
Right.
to
ones.
hire those.
I understand that.
And because and again, this is something else I didn't mention earlier. When it comes to kind of I don't know if any of you guys remember some of the cuts that were made last year, but the reasons for some of the cuts that were made to have the ability to move funding is when you're talking salaries, you have to have the money available by law, or you have to eliminate the position. You can't ask for an appropriation later in the year to cover a salary. Or if you don't have it, you have to pink slip the person, bottom line. So that's also a difference with cutting from a salary line versus an expense line. So just,
But fortunately, it doesn't sound like there's a risk here.
well, what I mean is, there are certain areas where if somebody wants to come back with a supplemental budget to cover what's happening, they can. I'll give you, yeah. That happens like with capital. That happens with other parts of a department. Like you may have a gas line expense. We say, oh, it's 25 grand for the year for this department. Well, come April, they've already spent 25 grand. They need to make it through the end of June. You can come back and ask for supplement on an expense, but they can't have a position on any department that says, well, we hope that by April we'll have enough money to be able to pay you until June. You can't do that. It's a contract
And
and
cities can't bounce checks.
exactly. So that's just another thing to keep in mind with, like I'm saying, where we cut. It doesn't mean you can't do it. It's just knowing that that's what the repercussion isn't, it's not in the same ability as it would seem.
So it sounds like what it makes sense to do, if I'm right, we're thinking about going through department by department, tallying everything up, and then confirming it at the end,
Well,
basically.
ultimately, we do have to give a final number
Right.
because that's what this financial order
Right.
is. So we give a final recommendation back to city council on the order that I read earlier, which had
Right,
the,
which is the
60
overall bucket of.
yeah,
funds.
64
Four,
million.
eight, six, 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 nine, eight.
So that's all I'm saying.
So as far as proceeding from here, do we do a vote? Do we not? We don't need to because it's not.
These are just
order.
recommendations.
So it's just we agree.
Yeah, and they want, we do like a vote. If you find a number and you want to vote on it, we can vote on it. All that is a recommendation to full council.
Okay.
It doesn't change any orders. It
Right.
just says, this is what we talked about. This is
Yep.
what we came to. And I'm sure that anything that I don't think we need to take a vote on every department if there's no issue. That can just be like, as presented.
Right.
Right?
Right.
But if there is, then we can say, all right, this is what, in case folks aren't watching. Sorry, Rachel. In case folks aren't watching and don't have the chance to view it beforehand, they can at least be like, well, what was the rationale for you guys doing that or
Right.
coming up with that recommendation? All right, so what did you guys have something you wanted to
11.5, is that what we said?
That's what we said.
see? I cut to. So, five from Look at the business units.
Salary, wages.
Part-time.
These didn't change, did they? The account numbers?
No,
No.
the company did not change.
Okay. I'll make it a little easier. I can combine.
Yeah.
That would be on the old book, it's page 117.
Yep. Yeah, I was just stealing the account number from there. So I knew which,
That's a helpful.
oh wait, I don't even need it. What am I talking about? See, I didn't get caught up in that.
You're too oh fire.
Hold on, cut. Make notes to myself that I'll have to remember. Okay.
Thank you for doing that.
I'm gonna go backwards here, because
Do we want to vote on that or is
Oh.
that gonna be
Well,
recommended?
yeah, I mean, if you guys, yeah, because, so all in favor of decreasing the salary line of the fire department by 11,500. Yay. Against?
Yeah,
Me as well. And there's nobody left to abstain. Okay. All right. Any other?
Yes.
Who else would like to say? Keep Michael, okay.
let's see, energy department.
Where are we going up?
This is the old book.
Chapter.
I'm looking at consult
Where are we at, 94?
Is that a new book?
in the new book.
94. 94?
Yeah.
Okay.
Where am I? Consultant services.
Yeah.
Speaking with her last week, it doesn't seem like they really go to that very often. And what do we have for past years? Do you have that page? I know 3/4 of the way into it this year. They haven't used any of it. I think we could probably safely cut that in half.
I almost feel like this department in the future needs more money than they're getting, but that's my own. Because they haven't had somebody
I
in
agree.
that seat, so they haven't been able to get those.
To do anything. I agree completely.
Yeah,
For reference, if you need it, FY 22.
Yep.
4982 was spent. What we had
Spent.
department.
It's just, there's so much money right now with the infrastructure bill and the Healy administration in energy conservation.
Okay, you talked me out of it.
Sorry.
Not trying to talk everything out of it. No, I'm really not.
I too would love to see this department do more. Like, I think it's got a lot of potential and it sounds like it's done a lot already.
Sometimes numbers can. That's what, I'm just trying to offer any background that I can when I hear concerns. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. Dispatch. And, I,
Throw me through there too. Where are we at?
going through this book. That's on
Early-
104, 104
104.
in the new book.
Talking with the chief. They've got two line items for dispatch clothing allowance, dispatch uniform allowance. Together, they come up to $5,500, and he was, for his suggestion, go ahead and cut it in half. So,
Really?
huh?
Did he say that?
Yeah, we talked about it, and he said, yeah, I mean, my question to him was, what do they got for uniforms? Polo shirt, in the dispatch office, and he said, yeah, pretty much that's it, and And
I mean, the only thing I want to make sure on that is it's not in their contract.
well, he said, go ahead and do it. So, I mean, that came from the chief,
Like, I
right?
would like to inquire, like, at least get that information before next week. Next week? Yeah, it's next week. I mean, we can put in a recommendation if
Right.
you want on that. But I would
I'll
definitely,
follow up with
I
that.
would definitely like it, just to submit it, because I just don't want to be in breach, that's all.
Right.
And that,
I will follow up on
because
that.
I think some of the line items on some of the contracts are a little silly. I.e. clothing allowance and uniform, but
This is another one where the overtime is higher than it had been in previous years, and we're adding a dispatcher, so I'm not saying, I'm just starting the.
I was going there, but yeah, I think that,
Last year was 45,000.
right, and
But last year was also a lot of chaos too, though.
But it's 60,000 this year.
right, and they have an 11th dispatcher this year. And I had that discussion with the chief, and the chief wants, of course, he wants to keep all 60 in there. But I think that we could probably get away with cutting that by $10,000. I mean, we have an extra guy in there. The key is that they have to have 2 dispatchers in there at all times. I understand that. And they have a first call, it's called first call, right? The union, or if somebody needs to go in and cover, it's not like, somebody low, one of the higher paid positions could jump in and take it. However, they're gonna have 11 as opposed to 10. folks.
curiosity, do you have munis, you had munis pulled up?
No, what I'm looking at
That's
is,
units.
Yeah, the 3/4
yeah,
line?
Yeah.
What are you seeing right now?
what am I seeing right now in dispatch overtime? They actually used, they were allotted 45
Yeah,
and they've used 52.
right.
That's why I figured 10,000, because they got an 11th guy.
Yep.
So as opposed to 60, we give them 50.
If we do 52 across 3/4 right now, I'm just trying to extrapolate that out.
I have a
We're
calculator.
talking 17,000 and change a quarter. So at the end of the year, that, you said they're at 52 right now, so you get 70,
Right, with 10 guys.
right? Right. Well, yes. Right, and adding one, even if one costs 57, it doesn't cover, it's never gonna cover adding just one person, it's not a 1-for-1 as well. as well.
Right.
So yeah, so I get what you're saying. So you want to cut it to, I'm sorry, what'd you say?
50.
So again, this is just to know,
It's salary.
this is cutting 10 grand from salaries and wages for dispatch. Okay. Is that what you guys want to vote on? Is that a number you all feel comfortable voting on?
Do you feel comfortable with that number?
Well, I shouldn't say, no, I don't, but I can do that in vote. I mean, I guess, was there other discussion on what that number should be before we bother? I don't want to sit here and.
Is there an
10,000,
alternative?
15,000 or like 12,000. I don't want to do that thing all night.
Right.
So I think before we try any kind of vote for our recommendation, there should be at least a couple folks who have a solid idea of what that number would be.
I mean, the 10 grand number sounds reasonable from somebody who, again, like I'm looking at this the same way with the fire department. It's like, it's a lot of overtime money and hiring another person.
Mhm.
So just like kind of on basic, it just seems logical to assume they wouldn't need as much overtime. If they're going to end up doing it anyway, that seems like it's an important thing to know, as far as looking at cutting these numbers. You know, so Mike, if you are thinking, like, if I would like to know your thinking as far as why you wouldn't want to cut that 10 grand off of it, especially considering you're the person who's done the budget process before.
I, again, looking back, I don't remember how many people they had in 2022. But there was $122,000 in overtime that year,
Right.
Yeah,
which is
that's what I was
double
looking at.
being asked. Again,
And last year was
I
72.
love like 5-year spreads on these things.
Well, that's why this is interesting, because I was questioning, because you've got 121 is the actual for FY 22.
Mhm.
And then still the next year,
We didn't get any actuals for 2023 when we got.
right,
our
but
budget
the
flush.
request is still at 45. So what did the mayor know that I don't know? That they were gonna have to come down that much lower, because that's a big drop.
Because
So is it they added more dispatchers?
I don't recall. I don't think so, but no.
They did or they did not? Well, they haven't.
Right, well, that was the request was 45, but like,
Right.
we're at 52. We're over budget already. But just. That's all. I don't know. And I mean, again, I know I know we're trying to find places to cut.
I don't think,
I don't know that 10 grand's really.
I don't know.
It's gonna cut 2 cents off.
People are diving the cops and the fire department over salary issues is the way to go, especially given what happened last year. I just don't think it's the right thing to be doing. And cutting expenses, maybe you can get me to listen, but cutting salary stuff, we know what's gonna happen. Someone's gonna get, you're gonna assume they're gonna use this money for what you want to use. There's no guarantee that's gonna happen.
I think it's less about, putting it into certain places and more just about doing our due diligence as far as I'm concerned. It's like, I'm not interested in cutting something that's going to be spent, but if it's not going to be spent and it could be in the general fund sooner, that's really the only question I have.
I will say that I'm not as adverse to this cut as the last suggestion, only because this isn't straight from a salary or from eliminating position. If we were to need extra money to cover overtime, that could come back. See what I mean? By that's the difference.
Right.
Is it could be added in if needed later, correct? Thank you. Yeah, so that's.
And so whatever way it goes, I could sleep at night, honestly, like based on that kind of explanation. Like if we don't make this cut, that doesn't seem like it's going to be money that isn't spent based on what we've looked at. But again, doing due diligence is kind of the point.
Mhm.
I mean, if collectively we only come up with $50,000 out of a $600 and some million budget, it's
Like
64 million.
It's like
600. 600.
very fine grit sandpaper.
Another thing, just morale. I mean, who's been taking hits the last 3-4 years? The fire department, the police department. So to be nickel and diming them, this seems to be just unnecessary for this amount of money. Because it sends a wrong message. Yeah, we're saving $10,000, but we don't care about you guys if you have to make.
Well, that's not how I feel.
Well,
I know, I don't think any of us are against the police, or the fire department. Like it's it's not what any of this is about.
Mike started off me by saying the department heads and the mayor came in with an impressive budget and they did their due diligence, they did their work, they made their cuts, they're making the sacrifices. So I'm not, in this area, I'm not sure if.
It's just my opinion.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying, but that set the tone and I kind of agree with that too, so I'm not sure if doing this is necessary, but that's just my opinion, so.
Job. Anyway. Is there something we need to vote on? Is there something you'd like to see? Well, I'm just trying to sell
Yeah, no, that's right.
Again, I have just as much, I have my one vote as you guys have your one vote, and that's all that. Just trying to move on what people want to vote on. What they like to see.
I don't think it's unreasonable.
Okay, so is 10, what you're saying, you want to cut it by 10?
Yeah.
That was the number? Okay. So. Position for that. Holy crap, I opened to the right page. Ah! Wow, the only cool thing that's happened today. This is is there any more to discuss on that issue?
Just kind of a general thing with the recommendations. I think the more we speak with United Voice as a subcommittee, the more that this will have play at the full council. So like we keep sending divided votes through, I will probably vote if we do this for the $10,000 cut, but if we keep finding ourselves in a 3 to 5 or 2 to 5, whatever situation, I'm going to find myself less inclined to do so because it's not going to be an effective message from the subcommittee. And I think we all do have, again, an agreement with, Councilor Toronto and Councilor Perry that this is a good budget and that it is a reasonable kind of set of asks generally, like again, none of us are in the executive branch, like we're handed a budget. But, again, it's a unified message from the subcommittee is going to do a lot more than a divided message. So if we find ourselves in these divided positions,
I don't really, I mean, I understand where you're coming from, but I think that these are
Yes.
good because I mean, if you look through all the rest of the lines that we're not talking about,
Right.
that's essentially a unified message.
That's a
of
good
those.
point. That's a good.
And so, I mean, there may be, when we bring these things up to full council, it may be that a whole lot more folks on the council feel that way, or it may be that they don't, or, it may be a 7-6, having not, I mean, yeah, if we could have everything unanimous, so of course we make everybody go real smooth, but
Yeah.
it also doesn't,
No, of course, I understand.
You can still have a discussion. at the
Waiting
full
room.
council. I mean, having a discussion doesn't hurt,
Right.
but.
One in the waiting room.
Thank you. That's the one I need help with the most, because I'm looking this way.
Yeah.
That's over there. And that's a whole lot of glare down on the screen. But, all right, all right, we good?
You're good?
All right, let's, you want to vote on that? All right, so all those in favor?
All right.
And opposed? To abstain, all right. What's our next?
I have one more.
Okay.
That's it. Just
Okay.
one more.
Good job, Mike.
And the superintendent filled us in on this at the last meeting, the assistant superintendent of curriculum coordinator,
Going to schools now.
right?
Ooh, the big kahuna.
It's small potatoes, once again. Her proposed salary for that position was $146,260. And she corrected herself. And she verified that via email. I don't know if you guys read the email. It's actually 140,000 cubic. So I propose we take $6,260 out of the salary, out of the bottom line. That's cool.
That's cool.
And I had my brothers, it did a lot more than that.
Yeah. I do, well, I don't know this, yes, sorry, I do know this answer actually, but, yeah. I mean, we can certainly cut that. I do want to point out just again, anyone listening?
This is
It's huge, crowd we have, that. Because I know, unfortunately, sorry, they hate me. The reporting and that lacked in the newspaper was,
Yes.
didn't mention the very, very important fact that there is no cut. The school is able to fund
Right.
the cut the mayor made without losing staff.
And
They're able to do it fully fund. This is a fully funded school budget. It's very different than last year.
Right.
And
For the counselors who are listening,
yes,
I want them to hear that too.
right.
Right.
Because it was not, the
If
reporter article,
it just omitted that, and no fault of theirs. I mean, there's a lot of information that night as well. But I just want to make that clear, and I will probably say this again next Wednesday before we talk about all of this is, all of that was able to be covered by their revolving funds that are there, which
which puts
is great.
in an incredible position compared to many other school districts in
Yep.
the valley.
oh my gosh, Northampton's in trouble, East Hampton.
My district is cutting 4 staff out of a staff of 50, it's like that's like a 10%, it's not.
And,
So-
and it was also explained to us, the staff that is, though potentially this next year, their position is cut in the way that because of enrollment.
Right.
They're not losing their job. There'll just be a redistribution.
She mentioned some retirements and some.
Yep, exactly. And then I mean, I know I've heard through the grapevine that, numbers are going to have to be juggled because there's a potentially lower enrollment coming in to kindergarten. So they're going to be restructured, and also where people are.
Right.
In the city, in each of those things, especially with the intra-district rules being taken away, I guess you'd say, like going back to having folks, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So there's just gonna be some reappropriating of positions. You may need an extra first grade teacher this year that you're not utilizing a kindergarten teacher for, and they might move to first grade. And then maybe next year their enrollment numbers are back up. You got to add that person back over to kindergarten. But I was at least relieved in hearing that there's no staff being cut. So
I think that,
Well, this certainly shouldn't affect anything because admittedly, it was an error.
yeah, right. Oh, right.
it's a low enough number
Yeah.
that it's not like they're gonna, I just don't want anything affect staff and teachers.
Right.
Like, we really need
Yep.
more folks who, are helping with counseling and all of those other things.
However,
I would, yeah.
these numbers are a mystery and I'd like to solve that at some point. The income generated, they're essentially running a business.
This is the transportation,
Yeah,
what we think might be a revolving fund, right?
That would be a question for the school committee.
Absolutely.
And I suggest for those of us who are interested in that, like, we start talking to them early to understand it, go to meetings.
Right.
Cause and I know you've talked a little bit about concerns about kind of top heaviness. And unless we have those conversations with school committee, we're a year behind.
Right.
We're reacting rather than
Right.
being proactive, unfortunately.
And in all reality,
And there's
there's nothing we can do about
Right.
Right.
it. That part, like we can be engaged ahead of time. And
We can use a bully pulpit effectively, but that's all we've got.
We want to vote on the $6,400.
so 6,400, is that the
It is exactly 6260.
6260?
Yes,
$6,260.
$6,260.
Cut from.
0 cents.
That's why I just want to make sure. Somebody said something to me the other day, said 6260. As we're all talking with these big old numbers.
Yeah.
And then they were like, what did they do? It was like, it would have been like 60, like almost like they were saying 6,260 cents. I wrote 6260. Because just like you did, it was right there. But they were like, no, it was 6,200, whatever it was. So that's just why I overclicked.
And is this one specified salary versus
No.
expenses?
This
or
is
just-
bottom line for school, that's it.
Okay, perfect. So if they want to take that out of highlighters, whatever.
You can take it out of highlighters.
I mean, they always take it out of
I
things,
mean,
paper.
like I said, though, I mean, if the salary is that number,
Right,
this should be pretty cut and dry to be like, this is that salary.
right. It would be bad faith, frankly.
It would be, I mean. Probably not.
Nope.
But like I said, that's what we're here for.
Yeah, it's symbolic, which is fine.
All righty. Good.
So, really?
All those in favor?
I-
I'd be okay with that.
Hey, there's your perfect one.
Yeah.
We got unity.
Yeah, I like that.
One out of three.
And it is reasonable to have this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not
So
trying to
that's,
say we should.
that amounts to under like, I mean, it's the big scheme of things. It's a little bit of money, you know,
Right.
I get that.
And if they really, really need it, I imagine there may just be $6,260 left in their revolving account. I don't know what they've got.
They have
I guess let's not get it.
$340,000 somewhere.
They do.
That may be what they're using right now.
I think it must be.
Could be.
All right. Did we really just get through that? Nice. There were no other red flags, out anybody?
Let it slide.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna sit back in the old book.
More money for the city council, no.
They
Did the budget go up from
got another nickel an hour.
350?
It's not
The whole thing.
Yes, we do need a cornhole training.
We do. Some of us.
I didn't want to show you guys up, so I didn't know.
You would have to be
Absolutely.
in Toronto.
Yeah, no, she,
Good thing, you know,
her and
Mike,
Derek. Yeah, they were good.
Killing it?
Mike, there was beer.
It was, it was.
I heard. All right.
So I definitely got worse.
I think I actually got better once I read.
Mhm.
So,
It's usually how it happens.
I think I get better, but it's not true.
It's like karaoke.
that wasn't really nice of that. That was a good thing to do.
Mhm.
Good turnout.
All right, we're gonna move on. To page 22. Order number FY 24-106. An order, city council upon recommendation of the mayor, in order to transfer 125,000 from band premiums to FY 25 general fund short-term interest. Move that be ordered to transfer that amount of to 125,000 from general fund band premiums fund 1628 to FY 25 general fund short-term interest account number 010075205925.
Second.
All right, so discussion, I do have some question here, and I'm so glad you're here, Mayor.
Can I see that account number so I can, that one that you just read off, and I'll do it right back. Thank you.
There you go.
What page are we on?
22.
And in the book, this is this debt stuff, right? 74.
Oh, well, this is a request. Yeah. Yes, it does have to do with the effort, but yeah.
Okay.
All right, so my question is, according to our balances from 229, and maybe this is just because it's anticipated that it's higher by now. We had 118,550.55 in that account. So with this appropriation or this transfer, we would be 6,449.45 short. So I just didn't know if we needed to change that amount, or because again, the balances on the backup were from 229. I don't want to assume that we've gotten an extra $6,000. Even though I've assumed that we.
You're looking at that spreadsheet on page 23.
Yeah. And the second column over general fund, all the way to the bottom. So I didn't know if that was something we needed to make an amendment to.
So tell me your totals again.
So the request is 125K.
Mhm.
And the total on here as of 229 was 118,550.55. So, and I know the budget was 125, 120, this was how we were paying for that. The short-term interest there.
May I look at the order one more time? Because I think that might be for, yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
You don't know?
That's the truth.
Okay.
I was looking at last year's. I don't know why that is, but I will find out.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Let's see.
But this wouldn't.
So
this
I
come out-
was
this wouldn't come
looking
out
at, I know we transferred money from. That is for, I know that we were transferring money from the band premiums to short-term interest in this year's. I know that we had done that, but I don't know that we did that for next year. So let me just take another look at that.
Well, do you want
We
to?
have, yeah, oh yeah, so I see, 125,000, that's where she's putting it. So, the estimate for this year on the short-term debt interest is $125,000, which is what it is, it's a guesstimate of what it's going to be.
Right.
And so, I did a little research when I was searching in the couch cushions for extra funding.
Your pennies.
And what I can tell you, I remember, because I found the band premiums and I'm like, what can we do with this? And you could only use them for certain things.
Mhm.
So if it came from something, you could use it for something. I know that isn't actually a wonderful explanation. But it actually was true, like if you borrowed it from this, you could take it from this. So that's probably why it's going to this account. And that's all I can tell you.
Right, so my question isn't the use of the funds.
Uh-huh.
It's the amounts that we don't have enough in that account to make this transfer. According to our balance on 229, we are 6,449.45 short.
Okay, but that I can look at.
Yeah, yeah, that's why I didn't know if it was just because
Okay,
the last,
like a magic thing. 0100. So tell me the rest of the numbers. 0100, what's the number that?
75205925.
The last four again is what?
5925.
5925. But you can't ever take more out of. There's no data available. Try it one more time. I don't know. I'll have to ask Kelly and get back to you.
Okay. So
What should we do about it?
my thoughts on this are, I mean, we have a week to get information. I don't see any problem with this. Otherwise, this is kind of, I mean, I'm just gonna foreshadow here, the rest of these operating budget things are just ways of funding, which we've already seen in here, like we went over sewer enterprise, we went over water enterprise. This is just the formality of how we say that's okay. Right. I would say, I believe we'd be able to amend this down in the worst case scenario. So if we got a week to find out, again, this balance is from February versus the other years, we were getting reports in April. So stands to reason that in another 2 months, maybe another $6,000 showed up, like before this order was written, and that's what the total was at the time. I would just say, if there's no other objections to it, we could just, this is a positive recommendation with the dollar amount possibly changing to what's available to us, because we obviously can't transfer more than we have.
Makes sense.
That makes sense?
Yep.
It does. Cool. So however, that would be formally written. I'm glad it doesn't have to be tonight. Yeah, so
Yeah, we have a meeting this week.
we do not have to
We do not.
next week, which is great. That's what we're doing this right now for.
We get a week off.
Yeah, and don't have to come back the third week. because we're, may think, we're not gonna have another Ways and Means until June. Which, oh man, spoiler alert, it says it on here.
I saw that, but I didn't believe it.
My wife will be very happy with that.
I
Mine
mean,
too.
Tammy did reserve us next Monday in
Right.
case we needed more time for this, but I
I don't foresee
she
that.
just wanted it to be reserved in case.
I don't care if we have to stay till 2 a.m.
But I'll just.
Stop.
All right.
It's like 4 more things to
I know. All right,
The mic's like, yeah.
all the, all those in favor,
Aye.
any opposed? All right. Oh, man. Feel like there's a formality in this vote. I don't think it,
Water enterprise one?
no. I'm just, because I'm looking at this vote record. I don't know that we. What I'm seeing here is that, we took up the vote to, or the motion essentially on the full budget, and we didn't put a vote through on what the final number would be. But I don't think because of these just being recommendations that we necessarily have to.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna leave that blank.
Because it could change.
Right,
Yeah.
like, but yeah, it's not as straightforward because there's moving parts inside of that one motion that I'm.
Well, like you said, this is, what, 3 months old.
Right.
Not even on this one, I was saying the general operating budget
Right.
that we went over.
This is the full council cabinet.
Yeah.
Remind us, you're actually still talking about the full budget. Can't put them.
Right. All right, so anyway, I'm not, and if that's wrong, someone will probably find out. and slap my hand.
So overall, the cuts are 27,760, so whatever that.
Every taxpayer gets a nickel.
Whatever the.
11, I have 17,260. Oh, wait, sorry, no, that's not right. You're right. 10. All right, it's 11,500.
Yep, 11,500,
21.
6260.
27,260. Yeah, right. 27,760. That was it.
27,760, so
Right. But I mean, I don't really think we need to vote on if we're going to approve that as the
right,
full budget. Especially because it, well,
Tonight,
yep.
yeah.
even if it's wrong, I'm good. Moving on. All right, we're to page 24.
Yeah.
Order number FY 24-107. The city council upon recommendation of the mayor to appropriate the sum of $2,538,458 for the FY 25 water enterprise fund. Move that it be ordered that the sum of $2,051,773 be appropriated for the FY 25 operations of the water enterprise, and further appropriate the sum of $486,685 to be transferred to the general fund for indirect costs, for a total appropriation of the water enterprise fund of $2,538,458 to be raised from water user rate receipts for the fiscal year starting July 1, 2024 and ending June 30, 2025.
Second.
Any questions or concerns here? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, page 30. Order number FY 24-108, the city council upon recommendation of the mayor in order to transfer 7,500 from band premiums to FY 25 water short-term interest. Moves that it be ordered to transfer the amount of 7,500 from water enterprise band premiums fund 1628 to FY 25 water short-term interest account number 610-7520-5925.
Second.
All right, any questions or discussion on this one? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'm asking the question that doesn't exist. If I hear 5 ayes, I don't need to ask if there's abstentions or nays. All right, page 32, we've got order number FY 24-109. The city council upon recommendation of the mayor to appropriate the sum of $3,586,722 for the FY 25 sewer enterprise fund. Move that it be ordered that the sum of $2,981,199 be appropriated for the FY 25 operations of the sewer enterprise, and further appropriate the sum of $605,523 to be transferred to the general fund for indirect costs for a total appropriation of the sewer enterprise fund of $3,586,722 to be raised from sewer user rate receipts for the fiscal year starting July 1, 2024 and ending June 30th, 2025.
Second.
Thank you. Any thoughts, discussion, questions? All those in favor? Aye.
No,
Yeah,
weird.
that's what I got.
Oh, the print there?
Little soup, yeah, there you
It's
go.
like wall.
For a minute there, it might have been- I thought maybe it was those candies.
Candy's sticking in.
Snosberries taste like snosberries.
Mm.
All right, we're on page 38. Yeah. Order number FY 24-110, city council upon recommendation of the mayor in order to transfer 25,000 from band premiums to FY 25 sewer short-term interest. Moves that it be ordered to transfer the amount of 25,000 from sewer enterprise band premiums, fund 1628, to FY 25 sewer short-term interest account 600075205925.
Second.
Dare to be different. All right, any questions on this one? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Page 40, order number FY 24-111. City council upon recommendation of the mayor, this to appropriate the sum of $2,326,674 for the FY 25 GSET Enterprise Fund. Move that it be ordered that the sum of $2,183,131 be appropriated for the FY 25 operations of the GSET Enterprise, and further appropriate the sum of $143,543 to be transferred to the general fund for indirect costs for a total appropriation to the GSET Enterprise Fund of $2,326,674 to be raised from GSET user rate receipts for the fiscal year starting July 1, 2024 and ending June 30, 2025. Right. Any questions on that guy? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
All right. Last but not least, page 44. Order number FY 24-112. The city council upon recommendation of the mayor to establish budgets for revolving funds pursuant to MGL chapter 44, section 53E and a half. Moves that it be ordered to authorize the revolving funds budget in accordance with MGL chapter 44, section 53E and a half for the fiscal year 2025. Receipts received but not expended in fiscal year 2025 shall be carried over to fiscal year 2026 unless otherwise prescribed in MGL.
Second.
Discussion on this one. All those in favor?
All right.
All right, so. It just says discussion down there, but.
So you're gonna look into the what do you want me to do that? The dispatch uniform shirts.
If you wouldn't mind, it's
Traction.
it's your request.
Yeah, I will do that. I'll be calling.
Cool.
I'll wait,
Yep.
I'll wait till midnight. I'll call midnight.
Yeah, that'll be on overtime.
In the regular hours.
I don't think.
Not his salary, he doesn't get overtime.
I don't think it's gonna be an issue. Might get a little flack. The other,
No, just as a clarification, so people know.
yeah,
Only because I do know there are a lot of hidden costs that
Or in
are
contracts.
contractual,
Yeah.
so.
so we,
All right, so our next meeting is not needed next Monday, so we're gonna skip that part. Our next regular meeting will be Tuesday, June 18th, 2024 at 6 PM, right here at City Hall Meeting Room, second floor, and also available to you folks, Zoom hybrid.
School year will be over though.
It will be.
That's great.
So that being said, I'd take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconds.
All right. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned at 7:26 PM. Have a good evening.